I yield back.
Gentleman yields. I now recognize Mr. Pfluger for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My deepest sympathies to the family of Sheila Jackson Lee. We worked very closely together on many things, and she was an excellent member of this committee. I agree with my colleague, Mr. Carter, when he talked about Americans deserve the truth. I absolutely agree with that, and also Mr. Magaziner talking about Republicans and Democrats working together on the oversight. Imagine if we worked together, the transparency that we could have on so many other issues that are going on right now, and I believe that that is possible for us to do. Thank you both for being here. Colonel Paris, was it clear to you, when we talk about rules of engagement, deconfliction plans, the assignments of which law enforcement agency will cover which section, did you have concerns prior to the president coming on stage? And if so, did you voice those concerns to the Secret Service?
So just to be clear, I was not present at the venue on July 13th.
But in the planning and the lead up,
Planning, my default position would be that our commanders are aware of what their responsibilities are within a unified command structure reporting to the Secret Service.
And do you believe that it was absolutely clear that there were zero questions of who was supposed to cover what areas of the venue?
I can only comment to our responsibilities, and I believe our responsibilities were delineated to us, and I believe we met or exceeded those responsibilities based on everything that I know as I sit here 10 days in.
I think there's still a lot of questions regarding the plan, you know.
Agreed.
And this is always, in any sort of protection assignment, that's always the hardest thing. Who are friendly assets? Who could be a vulnerable hostile actor? Who displays hostile intent, hostile act? I think it's clear there was a failure, and we definitely want to get to the bottom of it. President Yos, do you get the impression that Secret Service, at any point in the run-up to this or other events, has been stretched thin when it comes to just the work hours that they are putting in, the resources that they have? Was that communicated in any way?
Well, I can't speak directly to that. I can tell you that law enforcement across this country is stretched thin, just simply due to the inability to be able to attract the best and the brightest at any levels in order to maintain the staffing levels we need. So if that is the case, and we're not meeting those levels in Secret Service because of our inability to be able to recruit, then we need to address that. Or if it's the alignment of assets and the assignment of individuals, then that in itself is something as well, and it's something I'm not in a position to be able to speak about, other than to recognize that there's two huge factors here that need to be addressed.
Well, it's clear that that's the case, and God bless both of you for what you do, for the hours that you put in to protect our communities, and we can't do it without you, and we need you, and we will continue to advocate for you. I want to talk about now, that leads me into this next question. There's a piece of legislation, H.R. 8081, called the Disgraced Act. It says, denying infinite security and government resources allocated towards convicted and extremely dishonorable former protectees act, which is a whole mouthful of basically taking details away from people that could include those who are convicted. Talk to me about the impact if former President Trump didn't have a protective detail of U.S. Secret Service there. Talk to me about the impact on state and local partners to protect them in any of the communities that you represent. And by the way, he also was responsible for taking out al-Baghdadi, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, and Qasem Soleimani, and the Iranian government wants to do harm to him and other people like him. So what's the impact if you don't have Secret Service help?
More than happy to you. So I think, we're trying not to become very political in this. I think we have a president of the United States who has, by simple virtue of his position, having served as president, that deserves a certain protection because of his service to the country. So the rest of these things are all things that are not for me to decide, other than to tell you that I think we have a responsibility to our leaders.
This is not political. That's not political. He deserves protection. You're absolutely right.
I agree.
Colonel Paris?
I would just echo that my understanding is it's a federal statute that creates the Secret Service and tasks them with those responsibilities. So to contemplate a different paradigm, I would reflect back to the legislature to contemplate
If
something.
he was denied a protective detail in Pennsylvania this past week, the weekend prior, what would that have done to your local resources to protect him adequately?
I think the removal of any resource inherently makes the burden on the surrounding resources that would have been committed somewhat additional.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Point of order.
Point of order.
Gentleman's recognized.
So I appreciate the gentleman's question, but let me put it another way to the witnesses. The reference legislation.
Mr. Ranking Member, I mean, a question to the witness would be someone yielding
Yeah.
to you. A point of order, I'm allowing you to make a point
Thank
of order.
you. Well, the point of order is, if you read the bill, it says that if you are a convicted felon and found and sentenced by a judge,
Mr. Chairman.
then you would not be, that's my point of order. That you would not have service. You have to be a convicted felon and sentenced. Now, at the time the bill was filed, nobody who was a protectee was a convicted felon. But if those who are lawyers here know that once you are a convicted felon and sentenced, you are remanded the custody of that particular law enforcement agency for custody. I think it's an anomaly to try to say that the Secret Service would have to protect a felon in jail, a convicted felon. So this whole notion about my legislation, I just say to the gentleman, if you read it, it says you have to be a convicted felon and sentenced. Now, we're not there. The conjecture, you can do whatever you want. But let me be clear about the bill. Republicans have made a lot of hay about the bill, saying it's about former President Trump and would take away his security. That just is not true. The bill doesn't mention former Trump, President Trump, and it would not have affected security at this tragic event. The bill talks about any Secret Service protectee who is convicted of a felony and sentenced to serve jail time. And it does not take away security. The bill makes clear that when a protectee is sentenced and remanded to the custody of prison officials, the Secret Service is able to hand off the prisoner in an orderly fashion, and that Secret Service agents aren't forced to become correctional officers too. That's the legislation. That's all it says. For the record, we can go back to.
The gentleman will need to get to his point of order.
Well, point of
so we can
order
move on.
is, the line of question is inconsistent with the legislation. And it does not say on that day, former President Trump would have been without Secret Service protection. He is not sentenced. If he's not sentenced, he will still have the protection. Plain and simple.
So you yield on your point of order, Mr. Ranking Member? Okay. I want to make a point of order then as well. And, a lot of times we hear from both sides of the aisle about rhetoric and how rhetoric and the things we do in messaging bills that we do shapes discussion, impacts people. And first, my point of order is prison isn't necessarily a safer place. You can ask Mr. Epstein's family about that. And so to suggest that somehow you'd have the security necessary in a prison, I think is just not an accurate statement. In terms of, I agree with the ranking member that his bill did say that it would not apply in this particular case, but it's more about what we're doing and what we're saying at certain times that generates the attitude in our society. And so I just make that point of order about this particular legislation. I made in my opening remarks a request that he would draw the bill. But,
Mr. You just have a second. I just want to just make a quick comment. I think the chairman was clear that this bill was filed well in advance.